Namaste. Sivananda Supatha Foundation, Bhimanipatnam, is devoted to take forward Sadguru Sivananda Murtiji's mission by publishing his speeches and writings and holding seminars, symposiums, and conferences on various themes relating to Sanatana Dharma, Bharat culture, and its history, besides socio-cultural and spiritual topics. In pursuance of the above objectives, we organized an international symposium on reconstructing the cultural history of Bharat at Integral Institute of Advanced Management, Visakhapatnam, on February 18th and 19th, inviting reputed scholars from Bharat and abroad to enlighten us on various themes relating to the problems and perspectives in writing Bharat cultural history on truthful and purposeful lines. The erudite presentations of these scholars are presented in this channel. Kindly subscribe and encourage us in our endeavor to promote Sanatana Dharma.
Now, may I request Nilesh Nilakanth Oak to come over here. He takes us to Ramayana.
Namaskar everyone. I think I am between you and the tea time possibly. The afternoon is the tough one, but let's make it as less serious as possible. Thank you everyone for coming. So you listened to the summary of Puranas, very fascinating. In fact, that gives me a good segue for what I'm going to cover. The Itihasa and Purana. Many times when we talk about it, we say Itihasa Purana. You know, they come closer. Indeed, there is a difference, but the difference is minor. Since I brought that subject, I'll mention what I think the difference is. You can think of a difference between the Itihasa and Purana is similar to the gold shop, the jewelry shop, and the gold mine. Okay, the gold mine has gold, but we have to do a lot of work, remove a lot of stuff, the dirt, and the gold remains. Purana is kind of like that. It's not in a purified form. The gold is there, we know that. In comparison to that, when it comes to Itihasa, it's close to a pure gold. Maybe not 99.99, but close to it, maybe 97%. Okay, so what's the problem when it comes to the Itihasa? There might have been many other Itihasa texts in our Sanatana tradition. But today, what we have survived with is only two. Can you name them? Mahabharata and Ramayana. Those are Itihasa. What is Itihasa? Just like the Ramalela Garu gave a wonderful definition of Puranas. You know what Purana must have. These 5 things must be check. Then only it qualifies as a Purana. Itihasa, again there are many definitions. But as a summary, they point to the same thing. It says, Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesham Samanvitam Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. Basically, it's a guidebook. It's a guidebook for what? For 4 Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. How is this guidebook created? Purva Vruttam. An existing historical event is taken. Katha Yuktam. It is narrated in a katha form so that it grips your attention, but it makes you think. It's not an idle reading. Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. How many of you are, say, business graduate like MBAs in the room here? Few. Okay. How many of you are medical doctors? All right. How many of you are lawyers? Very good. Okay. So about this, everyone is there from these 3 professions, so I cannot bluff about these 3 subjects. But something is common about this, and of course many other areas. When we are taught this in the school, our professors make use of the case studies. Agree? Those lawyers, doctors, and business MBAs, they make a use of case study. What happens in case study? All the information is not given. You are made to think. And sometimes one person or one group may think in a certain fashion, other team may think in a completely different fashion. But if their logic is correct, if their thought flow is correct, if their evidence is there, they both actually might get A grades. That happens all the time, okay? So your thought process is checked. That's what is done through Itihasa. Purvavrittam kathayuktam itihasam prachakshate, but for what? Upadesham samanvitam. This is to be used as a case studies. It's an encyclopedia of a case studies, okay? But our problem we are going to look at, now many people, the previous one they talked about the genealogies, beautiful genealogies. That should tell you that this is a history, okay? We have the history. In this case, I'm going to talk about the problem of the dating of Ramayana and dating of Mahabharata. Now I'll explain you why that is important. So what is the problem? If you look at the existing scenario as a broad area, if you look at Mahabharata and look at those numbers, there are more than 100 different researchers, both in the East and the West, who have claimed, okay, the dating of Mahabharata anywhere from 7300 BCE to 400 CE. 7300 BCE is one of the great astronomers of India, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, S.B. Dikshit, if you have read the history of Indian astronomy. He did not say 7300, but he said if we make these assumption, it leads us to 7300. Who made the assumption of 400 CE only 1600 years ago? Professor Hopkins of Harvard. Maybe one evening he was sitting with a glass of red wine and thought of maybe I should date Mahabharata. Other than saying 400 CE, there is absolutely no evidence of any kind for that nonsense of 400 CE. Okay? But it's there because it came from Harvard. Everyone says must be right, or at least we should. Nilesh ji, explain why Hopkins is wrong. No, I don't need to do that. Okay? Ramayana, same thing. How many of you think Ramayana happened at least million years ago? Because it happened in Treta Yuga. You can raise your hands. Thank you. I will not hold it against you. Millions of years, multi-million years, because somewhere in Puranas you read 24th Manvantara, 28th Manvantara, Yuga and so on. That's why I said it's a gold mine. It's not a gold shop. We need to understand what is 24th Manvantara, 28th Manvantara and so on. I'm not going to go there, okay? Or Yuga, not so much Manvantara, Yuga, Mahayuga, something like this. Rigveda, we will hear, depending on the position you take, Apaurushaya, that means they are not composed by human beings and so on. Or they are revealed to human beings, but still the question is if they are revealed to the rishis, when they were revealed. Okay, that comes into picture. So you will hear they are timeless. I'm sure you have heard that. All the way to 1200 CE, 1200 BCE. Who is that? Another, a cousin brother of Hopkins. Okay, sitting with maybe brandy or something and coming with 1200 BCE. If you want to understand Vedas, we need to understand Vedangas. Without knowing Vedangas, we cannot understand Vedas. And even after knowing Vedangas, you may not understand Veda. How many of you have read Rigveda? Okay, those are a lot of honest folks in the room, yes. Actually, even if you start reading, now of course some of the great guys have read it, but if you start reading, you are going to stop in less than 5-10 minutes. Okay, for most of you, it doesn't make sense. Me included, so I'm not putting you down in any fashion, okay? But what is so amazing about our tradition is something that we truly don't understand, and this is not a modern problem, by the way. In Mahabharata, we have references that many people did not understand Vedas. Or there is a description that Narad Muni understood Vedas better. So when Narad Muni is coming saying, please ask him about the Vedas, because he understands Vedas, which means others don't understand as much, okay? So there is a description, but somewhere we felt, I may not understand it, but there is something fascinating about this, and therefore I may not understand it, but let me just preserve this. This is a great tradition. I call it preserver of tradition. Like E equal to MC square, F equal to MA. I may not understand, but let me just write it down. Maybe somebody else will understand down the road. Something like this. If you look at the 6 Vedangas, I don't want to go into the details. How many engineers in the room? Sorry, I don't want to forget the engineers. Okay. Engineers, okay? So, if you are engineers, definitely the 3 words will pop at you. Form, fit and function. You have studied that about any engineering machine part. Okay, the 6 Vedangas are nothing but form, fit, function and few more things. Foundation, fit, proper fit and time. If the part is moving, then the time. That's what these guys things are. So if you want to understand Vedas, you must understand these 6 Vedangas. One of the things that I want you to focus on is the time, which is a Jyotisha. In an Indian context, astronomy, Jyotisha is time. Please keep that in mind, okay? Let's do the Purva Paksha. And what I mean by Purva Paksha is this. Actually, I had a pleasure of talking to Mamadi Garuji, okay, and few others. And this was a wonderful thing. So, for example, Samshay. Now, Krishna talks of Samshay in Bhagavad Gita. That's a different kind of Samshay. Everyone remembers? Samshayatma vinashyati, adnyasya ashraddha dhanasya samshayatma vinashyati. Why he says Krishna, it will lead to destruction? Because that is a samshaya of a mind. But if you read Nyaya Shastra, you also see Pramana, Prameya, Prayojana, Samshaya, Drishtanta, Siddhanta, Avayava, Tarka, Nirnayavada, Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, Nigrasthana, 16 elements. I just said those 16 elements just to impress you. Okay, I know something. But there is a word Samshay in it. That Samshay is not the Samshay of a mind. That is a Samshay of a Buddhi. And if I get time in a question answer or otherwise, I'll explain the difference between the Samshay of a mind and Samshay of a Buddhi. So Samshay of a Buddhi is very useful. Without that, there is no progress. There is no growth of knowledge. So therefore, we have started with a problem. So we need to know what the problem is. But now see how the Samshay comes into picture. Okay. So for example, this is the Purva Paksha. Suppose, I'm not saying you believe this, but suppose what you know at the top, epics referring to Ramayana and Mahabharata. How many of you feel, if you have studied, great. If not, how many of you feel that, look, this Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are coming to us from a long time. They were copied every 300, 400 years on the palm leaves and so on. How many of you feel or how many of you know that these texts have Patha Veda? You know what the Patha Veda means? The variations. Okay? Somasya Putra Abhidaya Tiryak. Somewhere it will read Yamasya Putra Abhidaya Tiryak. Exactly same place. But somewhere when the person is copying it, that so has sort of the ink has gone away. Ink has evaporated and you don't know exactly whether it's a sa or ya. Okay? So someone might say maybe it's a Yamasya Putra. Now, Somasya Putra Abhidaya Tiryak, who may write Yamasya Putra? Maybe somebody who doesn't know about astronomy. That person doesn't know what to make sense of it. So yes, there are, epics has Patha Veda. Epic manuscripts also vary in descriptions. Have you heard of Southern manuscripts, Kumbhakonam manuscripts of Mahabharata? Okay, and then there is a Gita Press, and there is a Northern description, Sharada script, Kashmiri manuscripts, and so on. There are hundreds of these. There are some variations. If you have that information, this information might lead you to believe that, hey, look, I want to know about the epics. In fact, that was a slightly, not exactly the discussion between me and Mamidi Garu, okay? So these texts actually maybe appear to be confusing, conflicting, unintelligible descriptions. There are unintelligible descriptions. You don't exactly understand what the person is trying to say because maybe there are modifications. We might say epics have gone through heavy interpolations. Epic evidence may not the evidence may not come together to one date possibly, and epic evidence is open to interpretations. Like in Sanskrit, you know, one word can be translated in many different ways and so on and so forth. Okay, so if you believe that, it's possible that it may lead you to this feeling. I'm just telling you how the journey of a mind can take place if you are not careful. If your premise is wrong, or even if your premise is right, if your belief is wrong, how you interpreted that, it can lead you in a wrong direction. So it may lead you to feel something like this. Now, as I read this, please think in your mind, did you think like that about the epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata? For example, it may make you feel uncertain about the history in the epics. How many of you think that, you know what, maybe we know when Mahabharata happened, Ramayana happened, maybe we don't know, but how does it matter? Let's just focus on the Niti Shastra in it. Let's just focus on the wonderful lessons in it. Forget about the dating. How many of you honestly think like that? Who cares for the dating? Okay, very good. I won't hold it against you. I'll just tell you, you are wrong. Okay? The reason is, if you want to learn the context, Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam, but Upadesham Samanvitam, you need to know the context. I'll give you a very simple example. In Ramayana, in Mahabharata times, when Chitravirya and Vichitravirya, everyone knows the two young sons of Satyavati, when they were very young, Bhishma was ruling on their behalf. When they became a bit elder, Bhishma went on their behalf to Raja of Kashi. Okay? He snatched 2 daughters of Kashi, came back to Hastinapur and got them wedded to Chitravirya Vichitravirya. Okay? Now Bhishma is considered someone who understands Dharma. Bhishma is someone who is considered very virtuous. Krishna says Bhishma is someone who is qualified to recite Vishnu Sahasranam. Now help me. Can someone like you, including myself, can do that? You know, go from Vizag to some place, snatch 2 girls and come here and consider a virtuous person? No. The context is important, and the context comes with the time. Okay, something that is contextual and appropriate at one time, Dharma Shastra say that. Dharma Shastras are not fixed. It's different for different types. There are different types of vivaha, Gandharva vivaha, and all those 7 types of vivaha. Okay, so to know that, we need to know the time. You may feel skeptical, you may feel inadequate, you may feel embarrassed. Embarrassed in the sense of in front of somebody who is a non-Sanatani. He says, when did Mahabharata happen? Or says, oh my God, please don't ask me that question, or Ramayana, and so on. And what that leads to, possibly, your action. I don't mean your action, our action, anybody's action. You know, for example, when somebody asks you that question, it's not unusual that you'll hear careless and casual hand-waving about itihas aspects of epics, such as what I just said. You know, it doesn't matter, it's the values and blah, 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 that's what is important. I agree with you, the values are important. Without the time, place, context, desha, kala, patra, you truly don't understand. Okay? Avoid primary evidence, and you will see that. For example, again, I'm not picking up on Mamiti Garuji, but he's saying, you know, for example, archaeology evidence, Professor B.B. Lal, he picked up painted graveware, pottery, and so on. That's like avoiding primary evidence. You are going and digging somewhere and finding some pottery, and the place happens to be Mathura, so you think it's from Mahabharata. So, Professor B.B. Lal, Padma Vibhushan, possibly Bharat Ratna, I forgot. Did he receive Bharat Ratna? No, okay. Padma Vibhushan. I have all his books, by the way, great work. But he looked at Mathura, he looked at Kurukshetra, he looked at Hastinapur. In all 3 places, he found a certain type of pottery. He dated them to 1000 BC. He reached the conclusion, therefore, Mahabharata happened in 1000 BC. In these 3 things, the first 2 stages are phenomenal work, lot of hard work, digging, then dating, phenomenal work. The third one, just looking at those 3, they are similar and thinking they are from Mahabharata. That is absolutely wrong. What if you go today to Mathura, Hastinapur and Kurukshetra and find Apple phone number 6, whatever the phone is. And you say, oh, I know when the Apple 6 was around. That is 2003. So just because you find the similar objects in 3 places, will you say Mahabharata war happened in 2003? It is essentially the same logic that is being used there. So it may force you to avoid primary evidence. Actually, the blabber nonsense, and I'm using a very tough language for a reason, epics may have history, but they are not historical. Some great Indic researchers have said these statements. I don't know even what that means. Okay, or there may be historical, but there is no history in them. Okay, let's go further. Method. What is the method? If you look at the science, Western science, this is the method. Best philosopher of science, Sir Karl Popper, says triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, the middle triangle, in the context of a theory, in the context of background knowledge. It takes too long to describe the method. You know what Bhagwan Patanjali says in Yoga Sutra? I think somebody I was talking, he's an expert in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. The Samadhi Pad, number 7, 8, 9, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, Pramanani. And if you don't follow the method, Viparyayo, Mithyadnyanam, Atadrupa Pratishtam. And if you don't have evidence and you still speculate, evidence doesn't exist, but you want to say something, Shabda Jnana Anupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpaha. If you have some speculation but there is no evidence to go with it, it leads to confusion, delusion, and so on. Samadhi Path 7, 8, 9. Or if you go to Nyaya Shastra, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda Pramanani. Okay, on a lighter note, I call this doubt clearing machine. Have you heard of our Rahul Gandhi saying, you know, ek side se aloo dalo, dusre side se sona nikalo? It's possible here. Okay, actually magically this is so powerful, you can put the potato on one side and if you are lucky the gold may come out on the other side. Okay, that's the doubt clearing machine. Quickly, methodology, epistemology, ontology. Don't want to go into the details, just to give you a sense of what goes behind when somebody does a research. And this is not applicable just to me, this is applicable to all the 18 odd folks that you are going to listen over the next 2 days. You start with the manuscripts. How are you going to decide? Do you take Kumbakonam manuscripts or do you take the Gita Press manuscripts, or both, or critical edition? You have to make a decision. What about the Patha Veda? How are you going to deal with them? Translation errors, and go on. I won't read through the list. But if you make fixed decisions, if you make solid decisions and you report them, what those decisions are, so that other can critique you. You want other people to come and criticize. So when Mamidi Garu comes, I'm always delighted, you know, somebody likes that. I want somebody to come and critique and say, I don't agree with this and here is why. Vade vade jayate tattva bodho, you know, through that discussion, through that wonderful synthesis, our knowledge grows up. So if you simplify some of these things, make such decisions like the way I showed it on the previous page. See, last highlighted ones are my decision. You know, the highlighted one is how I decided to proceed further. If you do that, actually the complex problem becomes a somewhat simpler problem. Okay? Now, when you focus, that's what samadhi is. You know, dhyana, dharana, samadhi equal to samyam. If you are trying to focus on when did the Mahabharata war happen, suddenly you shouldn't get interested in Draupadi Vastraharan. It's important, but not when we are trying to figure out when did the Mahabharata war happen. But when I give a lecture on when did the Mahabharata war happen, people ask me question about Draupadi Vastraharan or Jayadratha and solar eclipse and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can simplify this, and if you further simplify, it may become a one-dimensional problem as to when did the Mahabharata war happen. Let's say what I showed for Mahabharata, it applies to Ramayana and so on. The method that I just showed you, again, not to take your time, but if you look at it, you propose a theory to solve a problem, then based on a theory, you look for the evidence. Within the evidence, you look for the crucial evidence. Crucial evidence is like a decisive evidence, you know, nirnayak saksha, decisive evidence, okay? Then you want to solve, look at all this evidence, bring it together to see if you can solve the puzzle. Does it converge towards one date or something? And of course you get the time, and then if you are successful, you see, is there any some additional evidence besides what I just looked at, which also supports it. Just like you build a model, and to test the model, what do? You go and actually test it in the real practice, or look for additional data, you know, something like this. Now those 6 steps are exactly similar to Vedangas. This is how consistent you will find the parallels, okay? Alright, let's get into it. A better theory, and this is the slide I may come back to if you ask, if you get into question answer. So I started with the first problem, P1. When did the Mahabharata war happen? When did the Ramayana happen? The TT refers to tentative theory. I proposed a theory in both cases. I'll tell you what it is. Once you propose the theory, you look at the evidence, try to see if you can test it. And why are you doing it? To see if you can eliminate the error. Okay? The evidence is telling something. You see, it gives me certain answer. Another piece of evidence, it gives me certain answer. Is it taking me towards something solid, or is it going in all different directions? Then I'm at a loss. But when you are successful, do you know what happens? You solve that problem. Like, when did the Mahabharata war happen? But actually, that's not the end of it. When a revolutionary theory takes place, successful theory happens, it solves that problem, but it gives rise to, gives birth to bigger problems of higher complexity. Okay, those of you for whom these names are familiar, Copernicus, Galileo, Tycho Brahe, Kepler, Newton, Maxwell, Faraday, Einstein. You see the journey from Copernicus to Einstein, for example, it is getting improvement. They are going through this cycle, P1, TT, EE, P2. The P2 becomes a P1, again TT, EE, P3. P3 becomes here P3, TT, EE, P4. That's how the improvement has taken place. Alright, so why only Bharat has Itihasa? This is very important. About 5 years ago, before COVID, I was presenting at the Oxford conference, you know, on Surya Siddhanta, and you might have, some of you might have seen those lectures. Beautifully organized conference, like 2 sessions of 20 minutes, and then they give you 90 minutes to discuss. Vade vade jayate tattva bodho. Fight as much as you want over sandwiches and chips. Okay. So when that session came, one of the Chicago professor totally unstabilized, rattled and angry and frustrated, came to me and he said, "But you don't have history." That you meaning you, Indians, you don't have a history. Now you of course handle in a different way, so I just wanted to handle him in a certain way. I said, actually you are right. Yeah, we don't have a history. I said, we have a itihasa. And he said, what is that? Like, and then we went on. But my point is, after that I got to thinking, I said, not only we have itihasa, but actually only Indians, only Sanatana tradition has a itihasa. And I want to just take 2 minutes to explain why that is so. Imagine going back thousands and thousands of years ago, we don't know exactly when. Some incident happened, just like say some incident happening today, and we want to preserve it for the posterity, so that 10,000 years from today, they can exactly know what happened here. What are some of the things we need if we want to preserve that information? We need 3 things. I'll give you a clue. We need a language. We need a language that is very able, capable, but also which has a low to no drift. What I mean by drift is, if you look at Shakespearean English, which is not many hundred years ago, 200-300 years ago, 2 centuries, 3 centuries, we don't understand. We have a counselor from UK here, but people have to actually take courses in Shakespearean English to understand what Shakespeare is saying. So within that 2 to 3 centuries, the language drifted a lot. But let me assure you, I know there are Sanskrit experts here. How many of you have not studied Sanskrit as you are anywhere in the school, for example? Lots of you. For all of you, just to save time, I may not do this exercise, or I might do it when the verse comes there. I promise you, and you probably know this, if we pull a Sanskrit verse from Ramayana or Mahabharata, a random verse, and we together work on it, those of us, me included, who have not studied Sanskrit officially, I promise you, with the help of 2-3 folks, we will able to understand 70-80% of what it is saying. Why? Because there is low to no drift. Therefore, any person with one of the Indian languages as their first language, and most of the languages are Sanskritodbhav, they can quickly understand what's going on. Okay? So we need Sanskrit. Something else we need. If it's a history, we want to know when it happened. And remember what I said, astronomy is time. Okay? And we'll see why that is so. And the third thing, how are we going to transmit this knowledge? Of course, orally or in a written documents. But to maintain the authenticity of it, we need that Guru Shishya Parampara. That what we have, the wisdom tradition, I'm calling it just for English translation. That is how it's in an authentic fashion it's transmitted. There may be embellishments, but still it's authentic tradition. Okay? That's how it's coming down to us. So that is that Desha, Kala, Patra, time, place, and the context or the circumstances. Now see, the 3 things I told you, it's not that you don't know, but it's not obvious to you that these are the 3 things you need in order to have a itihasa. That's like all of you have a laptop. Unless Intel tells you with a sticker there, Intel inside, you don't know. Many people did not know the importance of Intel. Intel had to run a marketing campaign saying, guys, I am inside and this is very important. Without this, it doesn't run. So these 3 things that I mentioned are actually very crucial. Okay, astronomy is time. Let's look at Mahabharata. Crucial evidence, okay, and then a clinching evidence. What's the difference? My research started with this observation from a Mahabharata text. There are 300 astronomy descriptions in the Mahabharata, but I started with this one. Ya Chaisha Visuta Rajas Trailokya Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishta Prushtata Krita. Arundhati has placed her husband Vasishta behind. Okay? That was the beginning of feminist studies. No, just kidding. Okay? Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta. That's what Vyasadeva is telling at the time of Mahabharata war. Why is this such a big deal? This is a star, by the way, not Arundhati and Vasishta as a husband and wife as a human beings. They were human beings. After them, the stars were named. Why such a big deal? It becomes a crucial evidence in the context. That's why you should know not only the time, but also the context. We are trying to find the time, so we need to focus on the place and the context. It is important because if you go outside tonight and look at the sky, and if you know where Arundhati Vasishta is, in the Saptarshi, the 4 stars and the 3 tail stars, the middle star in the tail is the Vasishta. Next to that, there is a small star, that is Arundhati. If you see how they are going around the North Pole, you will see Vasishtha is ahead, Arundhati is behind, which is exactly opposite of what Vyasa is saying at the time of Mahabharata war. So that's how my journey started in 1994. And I'm also engineer just like you. I'm a chemical engineer. So in my chemical engineering cockiness, I would say, I thought I will take a couple of weeks to figure this out. Then it took me 15 years from 1994 to 2009 to figure this out, the meaning of this one verse. Okay? Now when I did, this is the outcome. Do you know what it said? Actually in the past there was a time when Arundhati could be seen walking ahead of Vasishtha, the way Vyasa is saying at the time of Mahabharata war. But that only happened sometime after 11,000 BC, sometime before 4508 BCE. This is empiricism, this is testing, this is science. Now comes the logic. If Vyasa is saying at the time of Mahabharata war, Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha, and modern astronomy is telling us it can only happen after 11,000 BC and before 4500 BC, what does that tell you about the timing of Mahabharata, if this is true? It happened in between. It did not happen in the last 6,500 years. Are you with me? But then somebody will say, come on, but that could be just a coincidence. I mean, there are many other things, you know, mistake can happen. Well, what if you look at, I'll come to this. There's another guy after, sorry, forgive me, I don't know why this happened here. But there was after me, there was a person named Chabra, 2019. This is the kind of samshay is required. He said, Nilesh is saying this, let me check if what he's saying is true. Okay, I forgot his first name. Maybe it's there somewhere. So in 10 years after I did this, he actually looked at the latest and greatest of the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab data and tried to re-verify. And do you know what he found out? With a more precise data, actually that time interval even shrunk. So instead of 11,000 to 4,500, now it is 10,248 to 4,636. Shrunk by 1,000 years. So only Mahabharata war happened there. Okay, I know it's a bit tough. Okay, so this is where I finally found the date. So I'm just placing it for your reference. So the 5561 BCE is the answer, but I'll show you how I came to that. So one reference can be coincidence. What if Bhishma Nirvan, everyone knows about Bhishma, he fell down in the battle on the 10th day of the war, and then he was there until the day of Uttarayan, or the day of winter solstice. So sorry? Yesterday was a Bhishmashtami. Yes, very good. Okay, and so that he was waiting there until the day of Uttarayan. Now Mahabharata reference, if you look at it, I will not go into the details. What it tells you, using astronomy, the war began in Margashirsha. Today, 21st December, we have a Margashirsha, and Bhishma, Mahabharata tells us, was on the bed of arrows for more than 95 days. Okay, so if you take that information, it tells you, just purely based on Bhishma Nirvan, that the Mahabharata war can happen only before 5000 BC and only after 6700 BC. Now do you see the consistency? Because this time interval also fits within the Arundhati Vasishtha time interval. Are you with me? Yes, no? So we are going in a consistent direction. Now I'm going to fast forward. Okay, this is called perceived sense of complexity. Okay, not to deliberately confuse you, but just to speed up through the evidence. Now I said Mahabharata has 300 plus descriptions. Before what I just showed you, I used about 100 descriptions out of 300. What I'm showing you on the screen is additional 50 descriptions. Do you know what they are? They are the descriptions about the planets. Okay, all the 5 planets, sun, moon. How does that description comes? Samvatsara sthainancho graha prajwalito ubhau vishakhayo samipasto brahaspati shaneshcharo Shukram proshtapadam purve samaruya vishampate uttare tu parikramya sahita pratyudikshite dhruvam prajulitam ghoram apasavya pravartate chitra swatyantare chaiva dhishtita parushagraha vakran vakram krutvam cha sravane pavaka prabha brahma rashi samavrutta lohitango vyavasthita. This is just to impress you. My point is, there are about 50 such astronomy descriptions related to planets. I'll just take one. Shukram, we want to do this exercise? We can translate this, guys. Let's see. Okay? And we might do 2. Shukram, everyone knows what it is? Venus. Proshtapade purve, purve proshtapada. Purva Bhadrapada. Shukram Proshtapade Purve. Samaruhya, Sama-aruhya, Vishampate, shining next to Purva Bhadrapada. Uttare tu Parikramya. Parikrama, everyone knows Parikrama? By turning towards the north, it made a Parikrama. Uttare tu Parikramya Sahita Pratyudikshite. Who? Venus did it near Purva Bhadrapada. Samvatsara Sthayinancho, Samvatsara for a year, Sthayinancho, Graha Prajwalito Ubho. Two planets, Ubho, multiple, are becoming very bright. Vishakhayo Samipasto, Nakshatra Vishakha, in the vicinity of Nakshatra, Samipasto, Vishakhayo Samipasto, Bruhaspati Shaneshcharo. Can you help me? Jupiter and Saturn. There you go. Sanskrit is not difficult. Okay? Alright. So out of these, take these 50 descriptions. If you keep on doing this, they take you to that specific year within that time frame of 1500 years or 5000 years. That year is 5561 BC. Let's quickly do Ramayana. Similar. Now this should be fast. This one line, there are 6 references from Ramayana. Okay? When Ram, Lakshman, Sita are in Panchavati and Hemanta Rutu comes, Lakshman describes the entire 24-hour time period. You know, right before the sunrise, then the morning, then the noon, then the afternoon, then the evening, and again the descriptions through the night. When the sunset time comes, Lakshman says, Nivrutta Akasha Shayana Pushyanita Himaruna. The sun is retiring, setting near Nakshatra Pushya at the time of Hemanta Rutu. Today, if you look at during the Hemanta Rutu, which is what, November, December, you will see the sun is near Purvashada, Uttarashada, Mula Nakshatra. How many of you have heard of precession of the Earth's axis or Sampata Chalan? No? Okay, that's like astronomy 101. You know, if you know that it's a 26,000 year cycle, if you make use of it, it tells you you have to go back at least about 14,000 years ago. So that the statement of Lakshmana comes out true. Nivrutta Akasha Shayana Pushyanita Himaruna. When the southern party is searching for Mother Sita, now do you know when they left? Wali was killed at the beginning of rainy season, if you remember. Kishkinda Kand. Therefore, they were staying there just outside Kishkinda during the rainy season. There are beautiful descriptions of it. Then the Sharad Rutu comes, Vanara parties come together, they are divided into the 4 and they go in the 4 direction. Sugriv gives them a limit of 1 month. All other parties come fast. The long descriptions don't come because they did not find Sita. But the southern party, there are descriptions. 1 month has gone by, another month has gone by. They have gone through the Hemant Rutu, they have gone through the Shishir Rutu. And finally, Vasanta Rutu comes. So they left at the Sharad, like our Diwali time. And now our Ugadi time has arrived. And they're still searching for Sita. And Angad is frustrated. He says, I'm not going back to Kishkinda. Sugriv will kill me. He says, I'm going to just sit here and do the Upavas. Okay? He says, Vayam Ashvayuje Masi Kala Sankhya Vyavastita Prastita Sopi Chatita Kimatah Karyamuttaram. This is the time of our Vasanta Rutu and the month of Ashwin, even that is passing away. How are we going to accomplish our mission? So these are the ones. So one I showed you. Is there a light here? If not, so that bottom here is that Nivrutta Akasha Shayana, Vayam Ashvayuje Masi, and you can keep on going around and fill these 4 cardinal points. One more. How many of you, if I take you to the night sky, will able to show me where the pole star is? Just that's it? More? One more time? Okay, very good. So you know how to look at the pole star. If you know your latitude, right? You look in the northern direction and you do high Hitler at that level, you know, at that angle, and you see the pole star. What is the name of the pole star? Polaris. Today's pole star, we call it Polaris. Ramayana is telling us at the time of Ramayana, there was a pole star, actually a bright pole star, but it was not Polaris. It tells you that verse at the top. This is Lakshmana saying it to Rama when they leave from Kishkinda. Brahma Rashir Vishuddhasya Shuddhasya Paramarshya Archishmantah Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshinam. The Saptarshis are making a round around the bright pole star. The name is Brahma Rashi. Brahmyam Nakshatra Samavrutta. The nakshatra whose deity is a Brahma. What is that? Vega, Abhijit, Brahma Rashi. When was Brahma Rashi or Abhijit a pole star? How many of you have like a decent knowledge, you know, more than 50% marks level of astronomy? Raise your hand. Nobody, so I can bluff. No. Okay. If you close your eyes and if you understand just astronomy 101, you can tell the last time Brahmarashi Abhijit was a pole star was 12,000 BC. If you want very precise answer, that's how precise astronomy is, 12,048 BC. You can be that precise if you want, okay? Like a vernier caliper, you know. So if you put all these things together, it takes you to 13 millennium BCE, okay? And then within that 4,000, 5,000 time period, again, here also 4,000, 5,000 years, how do you find out a particular year? Again, that comes from the same reference that Lakshmana says. When they are leaving for Kishkinda, he says, Nairuttam Nairutanam cha nakshatram avipidyate mulam mulavata spashtam dupyate dhumaketuna. A comet has come near nakshatra mula and especially afflicting it. How many of you are aware of the child labor being used around the world? Yeah, I'm guilty of it. When I was researching this, our daughter was like a 6-year-old, you know, and she was very good at the video games. So I put it in front of the astronomy software, the simulation, and it says, okay, Arya, just look through this. Anytime a comet shows near Mula, stop it, call daddy. Okay, so actually I made her do this, and she was just like, okay, daddy, is this that the comet you are looking for? But actually the comet does shows up. That's the year 12,209 BC. That's the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. Once, see, this is, do you have this experience? How many of you play with a jigsaw puzzles or a crossword puzzle? Initially when you start, thank you, initially when you start, it looks like, I don't know if I'm going to be successful. But once you get 3-4 words, then suddenly all the clues starts coming up. It's like that. So once you get 4-5 clues here, you know where to look for 13 millennium BC. Then you get the specific year. You look at additional evidence. You solve the jigsaw puzzle. You solve the crossword puzzle. Okay, and that's how it was solved. The Bhagwan Ram was born on 29 November 12,240 BC, and so on. So if you want to remember as a summary of it, sorry, the PowerPoint is getting a bit distorted, but I'll give you the formula. Easy to remember for the exam. There will be exam today, just after my talk is over. If you want to simply remember this, okay, if I ask you how old is our civilization, people say millions of years, or usually they give another bad answer, 5,000 years old. Everything is 5,000 years old. That's very wrong, useless, stop saying it. What we know here is this, as a simple mnemonics. If somebody asks you, when did Mahabharata war happen? You may not remember 5561 BCE, but you can say more than 7,000 years ago. Can you say that? If somebody says, assuming you trust what I have done and read my books or listen to my videos. My video actually does a lot of good, by the way. Even if you don't understand astronomy, if you start watching them at the bedtime, you get a very good night's sleep. Next thing you know is the morning. Okay? So if somebody asks you, when did Mahabharata war happen? More than 7,000 years ago. When did Ramayana happen? Remember, 12,000 BC, more than 14,000 years ago. And I'm not, because of time, I'm not going to go there. But based on the Saraswati evidence, river Saraswati evidence, and the descriptions of it in Mahabharata, Ramayana, but also Rigveda, like Naditame, Ambitame, Devitame, Saraswati, we can say that Rigveda definitely happened, occurred, composed more than 21,000 years ago. I did not say it was composed 21,000 years ago, definitely more than 21,000 years ago. Just an easy way to remember, 7,000, 14,000, 21,000. Good? If only one thing you can take out of this, I would consider my portion, Professor Sudarshan Raoji, as a successful, okay, for myself. Multidisciplinary evidence, and that is when Mamidi Garuji and we were saying, okay, so hey, you have done this in a celestial. What about archaeology? What's here? Okay, we also have Pindi Brahmandi, we say, you know, whatever is the microscopic is also seen in the macroscopic. Galileo showed celestial is equal to terrestrial. Just like terra is like also uneven, the celestial is also uneven. The moon also has ups and downs, okay. Multidisciplinary evidence, now it doesn't have to be always on the ground, but this is on the ground. But where is the archaeology data? And Mamidi Garu, I did not create this slide after talking to you. Okay? I'm just picking on him just for fun, you know, just for the conversation discussion. This, so 5561 BC came from astronomy evidence, but pick any of these fields, and I'll just going to quickly show you two, just to manage the time here. Any of this, Rigveda chronology, Ramayana, I'll just mention Ramayana briefly. For example, Ramayana, everyone agrees here, Ramayana happened before Mahabharata? Yes? No? Okay. Thank God, there are not many academics here. Yeah. Ramayana, you'll find so surprising that Mahabharata has Ramopakhyan. Everyone knows that. But what some of you, actually it comes in a couple of times, but what some of you may not know, most of you may not know, that all the Ramayana heroes, Mahabharata individuals, they are so familiar with Ramayana that while they are fighting, before even throwing another arrow, he says, the way Lakshmana killed Indrajit, I am going to kill you. These are the kind of quotations they are doing throughout the Mahabharata during the war. Okay? So they were that familiar. So that tells you the relative place. But I'm going to, so I showed you that astronomy there. That's what I did and come up with the dates. But I'm going to show you a couple others, oceanography and quickly genetics. Would you agree that these are archaeology? Archaeogenetics and oceanography is archaeology. Okay? Quickly look at it. What happened to Krishna's Dwarka after the Mahabharata war? Anyone? Do you know how long was the time between the Mahabharata war and flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka? Anyone? The answer is 36 years. Okay, Mahabharata says that. So let's do the math. 5561 BCE plus 36, but because it's BCE, we do minus. 5561 minus 36 gives you 5525 BCE, which is essentially, now I don't know you can read it properly, but if you go, this is the x-axis is a time scale and the y-axis is the sea level rise. Okay, the red vertical dotted line I have plotted at 5525 BCE. Do you see something there happening? A sudden sea level rise in the middle of 6th millennium BCE. Do you know how much? 15 meters. That's close to 50 feet. Okay, and not only, it's not just a tsunami, guys. It's not like it went up and went down. It stayed there. In fact, the next millennium it went another 8 meters, total of 15 plus 8, 23 meters. Right in the middle of 6th millennium BC. And where is that happening? In the Arabian Sea, where the Dwarka is. If you are not convinced, let's go more. Okay, many others asked that. Mamiti Garoji just was being a representative of those folks. Where is the archaeology evidence? When people ask me, I ask them, how much time do you have? How much time Professor Sudarshan Rao ji is willing to give me to talk about archaeology evidence? We can be here until tomorrow morning. That much archaeology evidence exists. Okay? If you look at this, this is from the West Indies, the cricket fans, you know, this is the one at the top, is from the West Indies there. Actually, you see for Ramayana, but I'll focus on the top, the line at the top, that is 5600 BC plus minus 130 years, 5525 falls there. Sudden 6.5 meter rise in the West Indies, 7 different locations. Okay, let's come to Great Barrier Reef. So the one here at the top right is the Australia, east coast of Australia. Do you see that sort of a light blue color band going up straight and then becoming flat after that? If you draw the tangent, most people know drawing a tangent against the curve. If you draw the tangent and kind of bring the light down, that line is 5525 BCE. Sudden sea level rise, so you are not only seeing in the Arabian Sea, you are seeing at the Great Barrier Reef. Come down, that last one there, sorry, bottom to the left. This is the formation of a Black Sea. See, if you are looking for it and if you are sincere, the evidence starts pouring from all different directions. This evidence came to me, that last bottom piece there, it's an interesting story, I'll make it short, from a prisoner in Tennessee prison. Okay, an American guy who I think had enough time in the prison to read my book. Okay, so he sent me an email and actually sent me his photo with that prison dress and so on and so forth. And I wasn't even sure what he was talking about. So I asked him and he said, oh, that book also talks about 5500 BC. This is a work, that graph you see, 9 different scientific parameters, all saying a sudden sea level rise in the Middle Eastern Sea, the Mediterranean Sea and the Sea of Marmara, Aegean Sea, and then the water pressure breaking through the Bosphorus Channel in Istanbul and pouring salt water on the other side into a sweet lake. Now it is a Black Sea. Do you know when that happened? You can take a guess now. What year do you think that happened? The answer is 5525 BC. This is a work of Ryan and Pittman, 2 geologists from Columbia University. Okay, that's that. If you come here to, not far from here, go south down to Pumpuhar. This is the work of Professor Ramaswamy, 2020, very fresh. So there were these many ports, they were going underwater as the sea level was rising, but sometime between 6000 and 4000 BC, and keep in mind 55-25 is between the two, not only the port number sea level rise was so much, not only the port number 3 was gone, but actually, do you see, like, I don't know if there's a light here, maybe this is, no? Is there? Okay, which one? Oh, star, yeah, I'm pressing that. No, that's fine, never mind. But do you see that vertical line is where the Pumpuhar port is right now? But from there inside until Mayuram, 10 to 15 kilometers inside, there was an ingression of water between 6000 and 4000 BC. That is that Krishna's Dwarka time. And it stayed there for next 2000 years. Mayuram, if you know the place, Kaveri Delta, it was a port for the next 2000 years. And then the water started receding again and came down to where it is today, the Pumpuhar. Okay, I'll go fast through this. This is very, very fascinating. Fascinating for a different reason. Because if I wouldn't have told about my date and you have not listened to it, or if you don't believe it, the typical date every one of you would have heard when Mahabharat war happened. Can you tell me approximately how long ago? 3102 BC, which means 5000 years ago. Okay. So I will tell you two things. There are 300 specific astronomy observations in the Mahabharata text. Not any, even a single observation out of those 300, either individually or even if you put together as a group, not even a single piece of astronomy evidence from Mahabharata text will take you to 3000 BC. Forget 3000 BC. It will not take you anywhere from 4000 BC to 2000 BC. Okay, if you are not convinced, it remains an open challenge. We can do the debate. Okay. But now I want to show you the terrestrial evidence. This is from Indonesia. What you are reading on the x-axis is the time, y-axis is the sea level rise and whatnot. Start from my side, from the right. That first dotted line is that 5525 BC. You see that peak there? Something is happening, tsunami, sea level rise. It's for a different reason. Because of time, I will not go into it. But now come towards our time. You see another tsunami, another sea level rise, tsunami. Until when? Until you see until 3500 BCE. And then do you see a horizontal line in between? This is from 3500 BCE to 1500 BCE, which contains 3000 BCE, 3102 BCE. During that, whatever 3005 to 1500, whatever the 2000 year time period, there is no sea level rise, there is no tsunami. Okay, there is no conspiracy between me and these guys who did that research in Indonesia. Okay, in fact, they did this research after the 2004 tsunami. They were trying to study that and they found this evidence. Okay, so the Krishna's Dwarka, where is archaeology evidence? I showed you like 4 or 5 places. Actually, there are 30 different places around the world. It was truly a global event. Each of these date is splitting out, shouting 5525 BC. 3 Atlantis, I'll skip that. You know, that chart shows 3 Atlantis. So actually, Ravana's Lanka, there is a, in our Sthala Puran, there is a description that Ravana's Lanka also went under the water. But because of time, I will skip through that. Okay, let's one more and we'll stop. Genetics. You will love this. Okay, Mahabharat war. Okay, 18 Aukshohini male warriors. Everyone agrees with that? Now, if you do the math based on a Mahabharata text, do you know how many people, how many men fought? These days Indians are not into fighting that much, but you know that time. How many men? 18 Aukshohini comes to 40 lakhs or 4 million men. And those 4 million men practically were gone, dead in 18 days. You follow what I'm saying? This is Mahabharata descriptions. So suddenly what do you think what happened? Very few men, many more women. So the progeny that is happening after, the genetic signature of a Y chromosomes into that is what? A bottleneck of Y chromosomes. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. Now let me show you this. Now this looks like a conspiracy theory, by the way. But that graph there, the Y-axis is the ratio of female diversity into the genes to male diversity. Okay. Now, if nothing is happening, what should happen? If nothing is happening, like, you know, the number should be around 3. Like you see that line, we are going to read from left to right. That number is around 3. Do you see that, the blue line going around 3? Do you know why 3? Just please, I know it's afternoon, please give your best. If when a baby is formed, a woman, she has a combination of genes X and X, are you with me? A man, X and a Y. So a random combination of a man and a woman, the variation or the variety of the chromosomes we have is 3:1. You follow? That is that noise, those engineers, signal to noise ratio, that think of these 3 as a noise. So that's usually the case. But something magical happened somewhere, and I can tell you where it happened. Look at this tall peak going to 16. If you bring a line down there, it comes to 7,500 years ago, 5,500 BCE. A sudden something happened so that the male diversity shrunk so much. So in comparison to female genetic diversity, there is a absolute scale variation gap of 16:1. You follow? And if I want to do the relative, signal to noise is 16 divided by 3. You know where I got the 3 from? That's a number will be 5. So 5:1. Now the next question is, so we know a Y bottleneck, Y male chromosome bottleneck happened, a significant one, 16:1 or 5:1, 7,500 years ago. But you also want to ask one more question. Where? The place matters. What if I tell you it was India? Are you following what I'm saying? So look at this graph here. I don't know if it, sorry, what did I do? Okay. Look at the South Asia, the bottom one, which is sort of a dark green. And if you start following from the left side, the dark green is the first one, or the one that comes down the most line. It stays there the longest, and it is the last one to recover. Just to give you an analogy, if you find genetics a bit tough, if there is a, did I do something? No? No. Okay. Oh, here. Okay. Right, no, that's fine, that's fine. Well, I was giving a metaphor of an earthquake, you know, the volcanic eruption there. So if there is an earthquake, that you hear about earthquake, immediately 3 questions you ask. You know, oh my God, oh, did you hear about the earthquake? You say, when did it happen? Where did it happen? And how intense was it? What was the Richter scale? Well, here, the Richter scale for genetic earthquake is 16:1 or 5:1. Where did it happen? It happened. Where did it happen? It happened in India, that South Asia green line, the first one to come down. It goes the deepest, stays there the longest, and the last one to recover. And when did it happen? 7,500 years ago. This is Monica Carmine paper 2015. Are we good? Okay. All right. So anyone interested in the books? This is not a marketing pitch, but many people ask me that question, and it's not easy to tell everyone where to. You can go to Amazon, you can go to subupublications.com, and my 3 books are there. When did the Mahabharata war happen? 12,209 BC. So no guesswork when Ramayana happened. Bhishma Nirvan. But also Dr. Shiva Shastri's Aryan migration myth, that's a good one, and also Yuganta. Because I know if there is a time for question answer, everyone is going to ask me about the Yuga and how come Ramayana can happen only 12,000 years ago. I know that. Okay, so there is an answer in that Yuganta book. Quick summary. Ramayana, Mahabharata are our Itihas and points to sophisticated Indian civilizations more than 14,000 years ago. Remember, they both mention Rigveda. They both mention Vedas. So Vedas are long before that. Others may have a history, good for them. Only India has Itihasa. Ramayana is a Niti Grantha, conviction in absolute moral values. Mahabharata is a Karma Grantha. Actually, Mahabharata is everything. But let's say Achara Saishnuta, you know, endurance in conduct. The foundations for Abhyudaya and also Nishreyasa. That is that Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesham Samanvitam. Okay? Vaisheshika Sutra says what? Yato Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Siddhi Sadharma. Okay? Ramayana and Mahabharata provide the context, but also the impetus for material, spiritual and social progress. Like we are looking for culture. Now if you are believing, you know, in your knowledge that actually something was there 14,000 years ago, you will start looking for evidence 14,000 years ago. And I assure you, you will find evidence just like I showed you for Mahabharata, you will show similar evidence for Ramayana. Like elephants with the 4 tusks. That's what Hanuman sees in Lanka. Those are the Gompothere, and they existed until about 9000 BC. Okay? They provide enormous evidence and insights for the students of human evolution, agriculture, astronomy, genetics, technology, domestication of animals, domestication of agriculture, and so on. Quickly, the last one. If you get it, great. If you not, you can take it on a Shraddha. But this is a goosebump moment. Remember, I use astronomy, modern astronomy, software, mathematical calculation to figure out when Mahabharata war happened based on Mahabharata evidence, to figure out when Ramayana happened based on Valmiki Ramayana evidence. But actually, because there are 2 different types of phenomenon in astronomy, long-term phenomenon, the precession of the Earth's axis, short-term phenomenon, near-Earth phenomenon is the planets and eclipses and so on and so forth. They are not connected with each other. Okay, the precession and planetary are not connected. But both type of evidence exist in both of our epics. So do you know actually what happens? The evidence of Ramayana and the evidence of Mahabharata act as a golden calibration standards to decide the efficacy, the validation of modern astronomy. Thank you.
Wonderful job. So you have given us the confidence to build up the remote fast.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I must have gone over my time, so we can stop.
So, sir, now we have tea. It's the most welcome idea, isn't it? Let us have tea. And then be back here in just 15 minutes.